There we go. All right, so now we are going to turn over the West Virginia Farmers Market Peer Network meeting to Dan and Heather from Solar Holler.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. Really appreciate it. I'm Dan Conant. I'm the founder and CEO of Solar Holler, and we've got Heather Ransom, our Director of Marketing and Sales uh, for the company. And yeah, I was really excited to join you all today to talk about the flood of new incentives and grant programs that are making solar viable and affordable for agricultural uh, producers all across West Virginia and really nationwide, but especially in West Virginia. We got lots of sweet stuff that's targeted towards us. So wanted to go through a lot of the ins and outs of that today, and of course take questions and kind of get into any of the nitty-gritty details that you all want to hear about. So without further ado, Heather, a little bit about us to start. I started up the company in 2013 in Shepherdstown in the Eastern Panhandle, but we work statewide. We've got over the past 11 years, we've done everything from small residential systems to big school portfolios to working with lots of farms. And actually, until last year, the largest system ever done in the state was on a poultry house in Moorfield. So doing all kinds of stuff all across West Virginia, as well as Kentucky, Virginia, and Ohio, but the bulk of our work is in West Virginia. We've done lots of other really cool stuff along the way too, like setting up the first solar training programs in the region, which was focused on kids of coal miners down in Wayne and Lincoln and Mingo counties. And some other things we're really proud of are being unionized. All of our crews are union members through our partnership with the IBEW, and we're majority employee owned. Everybody who is who stays with the company for more than a year gets ownership in the company. These days, we're up to 105 full-time staff and installing about 700 projects a year. So doing lots of good stuff across the state. All right, enough about us though. Let's get on to the other. Actually, keep going past that. So some big pieces that have changed the game for us here in West Virginia. We worked really closely with Senator Manchin's office for a really long time on some key provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act, which was he announced in the summer of 22 and got signed into law in August of 22. In particular, those incentives are really targeting investment into renewable manufacturing. So building up, we don't want to just build projects, we want to build the actual stuff, and we want to do that in America. And we also want to do it in coal country because we're the ones who have built the rest of the country for the last couple hundred years, and we deserve a seat at the table as we're building out the renewable energy grid of the 21st century. So there's a ton of incentives in there specifically for West Virginia, but it also broadens it even further. Up until the Inflation Reduction Act, nonprofits were really left out of the game, and as well as low income folks and people that weren't making tons of money. So we're really excited to finally be in a place where solar is available to everybody, and those are the details we'll get into here. So starting at the beginning, so just a little bit of basics. The vast majority of solar systems out in the world these days use what is called net metering, which means that during the day when the sun is out, your solar panels are soaking up the sun, producing electricity, and first they go into the building to power whatever you got going on in there, whether it's coolers, freezers, or TVs or lights or whatever you got going on. It first goes into the building, and then whatever the excess is goes back through your meter and out onto the grid to power everybody else in the area. Uh, Most systems do not have batteries, but if you want batteries, that's kind of an add-on that would allow you to store power for when the grid is down. Under a net metering setup, under the normal setup, the systems automatically turn off in the event of an outage to protect line workers out on the grid. So yeah, that's all net metering. That's the how the vast majority of systems work. Any questions on that from anybody? Nope. Okay. Yeah, so let's keep going then. So when we're working with folks, we are designing we can design systems to a couple of different endpoints. The first thing we'll do is we'll get an address and take a look at your roof via Google Earth and other satellite imagery. We build up a 3D model and figure out how much sunlight is going to hit every square inch of that rooftop or out in the field, and run that through all of our shading analysis and utility bill analysis. So we can figure out how much sunlight is going to hit, how much electricity that'll produce, and how much that'll save you on your bill. So our goal is usually to design a system that produces as much energy as you use over the course of the year. We don't really want to go beyond that, because beyond that, you're basically giving the utility free energy. But we'll get as close as possible to 100%. And then from there, we handle all the financing, buying panels, permitting, inspections, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so there are two ways for farms and commercial properties to go solar, or two main ways. The first is kind of the traditional way. You buy the system either with cash or loans. In those cases, because you own the system, you'll be eligible for all of the tax incentives, grants, and depreciation that we're going to talk about. The second option is what we're starting to do with some of the larger poultry houses, as well as schools and municipalities, where we do what's called a power purchase agreement. These were legalized in West Virginia 2 years ago. And the idea behind that is an organization or a farm can contract for the power. So Solar Holler would put in the equipment, or someone else like us too, would put in the equipment on your roof for free to the organization, and then just sell you the power over usually a 25-year agreement. Under that scenario, we take on all the risk with all the maintenance. All the maintenance is on us, and we have to deal with all the tax credits and loans and capital behind the scenes. So we're really seeing that take off for folks like the Wayne County schools that we just announced a huge deal with, Cabell County libraries, and as well as some of the poultry houses I was mentioning over in the Eastern Panhandle. So, yeah, as we promised, more about the Inflation Reduction Act. So the first big thing was that there was already an existing 30% tax credit that has been extended through at least 2032 and possibly beyond that. So, and that qualifies, or that applies to homeowners, businesses, and now nonprofits. So that's really what everybody's going to be starting out at, is that 30% baseline tax credit. On top of that, there's a new energy community tax credit for an additional 10%. That is targeted towards towns and counties that have been at the heart of the fossil fuel generation for forever. So the way those rules were written, it applies to areas that have closed coal mines, adjacent areas, or also regions that have significant coal or gas or oil employment. It was really written, Senator Manchin wrote it to cover as much of West Virginia as possible. So we got 52 out of 55 counties. The only ones that don't apply are Jefferson, Berkeley, and Hampshire. Everybody else in the state gets it. So really excited for that. And so for the most part, if you're in West Virginia these days and you're a business or a nonprofit, you're looking at a 40% tax credit. It's only in those couple of counties that we're down at 30%. In addition to that, there have been several moves around bonus depreciation, which allows you to write off and depreciate more of the system earlier. We're currently at 60% of the system being written off in year one. So that really helps accelerate the benefits as well. At some point next year, we're still waiting on um, on a lot of bureaucracy behind this. But there was an additional tax credit that says that if you use American-made panels and other equipment, that you would qualify for an extra 10%. So as a result of that, we're seeing a huge surge in manufacturing announcements with folks like the main facility that we buy our panels from in Georgia announced that they're quintupling in size, and they're building all of that out this year. Factories in Arizona and Texas and Washington are all being expanded. So we're going to really see a renaissance of green energy manufacturing in the US as a result. Once all those modules or once all those solar panels start rolling off the lines, it'll be possible to get that extra 10%, which would boost you to 50. But we need a little more time for that. In addition to that, there's a huge pool of money that is going out through the U.S. Department of Agriculture for a program called REAP, the Rural Energy for America program. That's not just for farms, that's also for small businesses. You can see this right now we've got 1.3 billion available nationwide, and just by Solar Holler alone, we've submitted $6.5 million worth of applications on behalf of our clients this year. That's 45 projects that we have fully written and submitted. Really proud that we're actually at 100% approval for all of the completed applications that we've put in there. So that is the types of folks. You have to be a small business or agricultural producer. So pretty much everybody on this call or listening or watching later will apply. But it's not just for the ag world. It's also other folks that we've gotten qualified include car dealerships and a pepperoni roll bakery that I'm really proud of. And let's see what else. A taxi dealership and a music store and basically all the cool small businesses around the state that we work with. These applications there's a quarterly application deadline. So we just went through a big round on March 31st. The next deadline or the next group will go in on June 30th. Right now, these grants are for 50% of the total cost of the system. So once again, we're at a 40% tax credit plus a 50% REAP grant. That takes you up to 90, and then the bonus depreciation can end up taking you over 100%. The 50% funding is to the best of our knowledge, only available through the June 30th cycle of this year, and then it'll go back down to 25%. So for folks who are thinking of it or interested in this program, it'll be much better for the next couple months before that huge pool of money that came in through the IRA is used up. So yeah, if we add all of that up, we're at the 30% baseline credit, 10% energy community, 50% REAP, and the bonus depreciation, which varies based on your tax rate and everything. Some other, actually, Heather, do we have a slide on transferability at all? No. Okay. So one other important thing to note on these tax credits, for the first time, you can sell the credits. Before the IRA, if you didn't have the tax appetite or didn't make enough money in the first place, you were kind of out of luck. Now, for the first time, a farm or business can sell those credits to somebody else. Um, and so we've been working with a number of small businesses where we're brokering those tax credits and allowing you to, a farm that uh, might not pay much in taxes will be able to work with one of our investors and sell those credits. You'll typically see there'll be a margin there, so you won't get 100, you won't get the full value of the tax credit, and it might be something more in the 80 to 90 cents on the dollar range. But at least it allows you to benefit from that for the first time. So yeah, one other note, I was mentioning nonprofits. They really suffered from that same issue of not paying taxes in the first place. And my very personal win in the Inflation Reduction Act was to make it so that any nonprofit can now uh, change their tax credit into a grant from the U.S. Treasury. So every nonprofit that goes solar will now get those same benefits. You just have to wait about 12 to 18 months to get through the tax cycle, and then Treasury will cut a big check. So yeah, with that, those are all the slides we had for y'all. Happy to answer any other questions folks have.
Sure, we've got one here in the chat. Sarah asks, is net metering available with PPA?
Yes. Yeah. Net metering is legal across the state. It is going to be changing a little bit, especially in First Energy territory at the end of the year. So that's an important thing to know. But net metering, it doesn't matter how you finance the system. So in the case of a PPA, Solar Holler sells you the power off of the system, and then you use that power just like you would if you own the panels. So it's honestly none of the utilities business how you finance the system.
Okay, we have Baxter has their hand raised.
Mm-hmm. Go for Baxter. Nope. Baxter, if you're trying to ask a question, I think you might be on mute. Okay. Well, let me fill in a little bit more on the First Energy front. So we just went through a big uh, kerfluffle with First Energy in the Public Service Commission. They had filed to get rid of net metering, and we organized and fought back on that. And we had close to 2,000 folks submit protest comments to the Public Service Commission, and we flooded every senator and delegate in the state with 3,000 emails in one night, which was pretty incredible. And the end result is we negotiated a deal with First Energy. Right now, you're getting 1-to-1. When you send a solar kilowatt hour onto the grid, you get a credit for 1 kilowatt hour. So you're essentially getting retail credit. They had wanted to end that immediately. Instead, we got it opened back up so that anybody who applies to use net metering by the end of this year gets grandfathered in for the next 25 years. So that's really important. Starting next year, and it doesn't have to be installed by the end of the year. It just has to be, you have to submit an application. So contract signed and form submitted. Starting next year, instead of 1-to-1 retail, it'll go down to a new value of solar where everybody gets the same rate. It'll be 9.3 cents per kilowatt hour. And it doesn't matter whether you're residential or industrial or commercial, everybody will get that. So that'll bring the value down for homeowners, but it'll bring it up for a lot of farms and businesses. So it can do funky things. just depending on who you are. So if you're a small farm, or really think about residential, small farms that you live on, then you're probably going to be better off this year and want to get locked in under the existing system. If you're a bigger poultry house operation, it could actually play in your favor. So if you're interested in seeing how the numbers work out side by side, we're happy to run those. For now, that only affects First Energy territory, which is the northern half of the state. If you're on AEP, the existing program, 1-to-1 is still the law of the land,
Um,
at least now.
okay, we've got a couple more chat questions, but I'll go ahead and start with those, and then I had one as well. Are utilities working with you to make this happen, or fighting you for your goals, the solar goals? It sounds a little bit like they're fighting quite hard if they can.
They're fighting. That they're fighting, but we ended up negotiating, and I think we ended in a really good spot. So the deal we struck, it was a negotiated settlement between First Energy, Solar Holler, the Public Service Commission, and West Virginians for Energy Freedom, and a couple of other folks. So we were all kind of in there going line by line through how they value the solar, and kind of just getting really deep into the budgeting and technical details. So yeah, it was a fight, but I think we're in a good spot now.
Great.
Um,
And why were the three counties excluded?
Yeah, the way the rules were written around what is an energy community, it depended on, do you have any closed coal mines? Are you close to an area with closed coal mines, or do you have kind of the ecosystem of cleaning and producing coal, or power plants? And Jefferson, Berkeley, and Hampshire County have never had coal mining, and so it fell outside of those, they just didn't qualify because there's never been any coal mining.
Understand. Question I had, that actually came from my brother, who's going to watch this on YouTube eventually when we get it put up here later today. If you don't want to sell power back to the grid. You kind of want to be off grid, like just you and your solar. That is still an option, right? And do you get the kind of benefits like the depreciation and the things like that if you're not selling back to the grid?
Yep. Well, well, sorry, losing my words there. If you're truly not trying to sell to the grid, so if you're just thinking like a small like cabin off in the woods that's off grid, yeah, the incentives do change in those situations.
Okay.
We don't directly deal with any systems like that. All the systems we do, I don't want to misspeak on anything related to the incentives around that.
Okay.
That said, most folks, when they talk about selling back to the grid versus producing for their own use, they're actually thinking about grid tied solar, where you're just trying to offset your own needs, which is different than thinking about a giant power plant where you're sending power back onto the grid.
Okay.
And you can't, so let's think about a big poultry farm. You could cover every rooftop on a poultry farm and sell power back to the grid. It won't be worth quite as much because you'll be selling at wholesale rather than retail, but you could still do it.
Okay.
And the numbers will change, and you'll have to decide whether it financially makes sense in your particular situation.
So with the way that this is set up now, your standard setup, it just takes what you don't use and just kind of sends it back, or you're only covering, I'm just wanting to make sure that I understand completely what net metering is, because you're only paying for the difference of what the grid has to supply beyond what you've supplied yourself, right? Like,
Yeah.
so if I'm supplying 70% of my power, I'm only paying for the grid to supply like 30%, right?
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yep. Yeah. At the end of every month, the utility will, on your bill, it'll say, we sent you X number of kilowatt hours. You sent us uh, X number, and you just pay for the difference. If you produce more than what you use, so especially in the summer, the panels are really cranking out.
Yeah.
You build up a credit bank that you carry forward through the winter. So it doesn't really matter what you're producing uh, month by month under the current scenario. You just build up that bank and that bank account and carry it through the winter.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't understand that part. That makes this seem like the optimum way to go then.
Yeah,
Um,
really you're using the grid as a big battery, and it just becomes an accounting like it's less of an engineering challenge and more just accounting.
understand here. And Sarah says that her farm's completely off grid and they depreciate the cost on their business taxes. So that's great. That's really cool, Sarah.
Dan, this is Baxter. I'm sorry. I was having an issue with my phone earlier.
All good, all good.
Glad to have you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I actually have two questions. The property that we moved into, the house is a little older. At the time when we purchased it, we didn't. We chose not to have a home inspection. It was not necessary because of the type of transaction that we made. Um, I can see, it's an older house. Um, we don't have any leaking or anything with the roof, but I can see definitely some house settling and stuff. Most roofs, 25, maybe 35 years, and you're going to be replacing them. As far as I can tell through any of the history of the paperwork, it hasn't ever been replaced or repaired. Should we, if we're interested in Solar Holler, should we go ahead and address and get a new roof prior to, or should we wait, have an inspection done? And I'm not sure. I know you're taking a satellite picture to gain, knowledge on how much sun is it going to receive. Um, but I guess my question is, let's say we go through that part, then are we going to have an inspection of the roof before? And let's say the inspector says, you maybe got 5, 10 years left on your roof. Is it a wise idea to go ahead and replace the roof now? Because my understanding is that technology for solar is 20, 25 years pretty consistently before it has to be changed. I can't imagine we want to pull these things off halfway through and
Yep,
replace them off.
yep. Absolutely. We don't want to be if you're seeing bows in your roof, if you're worried about the structural integrity, you absolutely want to replace that before you add panels and the additional, and it works out to 4 to 5 pounds per square foot. And but it more importantly, it's for most residential or homes, that's not a big deal, but especially if you're looking at barns and older barns where you can sometimes see bows, that gives us the queasies. So don't do that. The lifetime on the panels is 35 to 40 years with 25-year warranties on all the stuff. So we're talking about a multi-generational investment here. So it wouldn't make sense to try to plow forward, put stuff up there, and ignore the roofing issue if there is one there.
Got one
The
follow-up. I'm sorry.
the other thing I was going to add there is if we have taken systems down and re-roof or had someone re-roof and then we put them back up, but it is an added cost. You're paying crews a day to take them down, a day to put them back. That can turn into couple $1,000s easily to do that. So if you can avoid it, and you know you need to re-roof anyway, it's better to re-roof first.
Could you go forward in the slides to the slide with the cow on it? I was happy to know that I'm very familiar with those folks. They are Wetzel County people, and they are also with the Wetzel County Farmers Market. So you guys all know, recognize the cow and farm immediately. There is not on their roof. Is that a common setup? Is that something maybe Baxter could consider?
Yep. We do ground mounted systems all the time. They're probably like 1 out of 10 that we do. You typically want to stay within a couple 100 feet, but what we do is, you can see, we build a little racking system out there. Then we dig a trench and bury conduit and the wire back to wherever your meter is, and we tie in at that spot. So
Okay.
yeah,
I'm
definitely,
sorry.
definitely doable.
Yeah, I do have a follow-up question, and then just, strangely enough, I thought of another. Let me go with the one that I just thought of. We just had, heavy storms come through. Having the panels attached to your roof, there's going to be an air gap there. What studies have been shown that it either decreases the possibility of damage to the roof or increases as that airflow goes over and under and pulls away? Now, obviously, if you have an actual tornado hit your house, duh. But I'm just talking about can have high winds from time to time, that type of stuff. And then the second question, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you now. If we're doing rain barrel collection, water collection off the roof, does this affect it in any way? Rain's still falling on the panels and then falling off onto the roof and then into the gutter collection would be my guess, but please address those two questions and I'll be quiet. Thank you for your time.
Okay, let's take the rain barrel question first. If you're asking about, as long as you can redirect the water into the rain barrel, I don't see an issue there. As far as what it's rolling over, it's the panels are made out of glass and the frames are aluminum. So as long as you're fine with that, I don't see an issue. When it comes to wind, roof mounted systems are they're wind tunnel tested to 115 miles an hour. With the storms that we just got yesterday, we have had a couple of issues that showed up with roof mounted systems, but it was not the panels themselves. What it was like nearby tree limbs, or in one case, a trampoline, neighbor's trampoline flying and smashing into the panels. The panels are factory tested by launching golf balls out of cannons at 65 miles an hour. So they're meant to withstand hail up to a golf ball size. If you get to baseball size, that's a different story. Like there's only, they're still ultimately glass. And then, flying stuff is going to impact it. But as far as the actual attachments to the roof, and the quality of the roof and the attachments, as long as we're staying under 115 miles an hour, we'll be fine. And then we also had an issue with a ground mount where other stuff was flying at it, and and in those cases we want everybody, including this, under their home insurance policy, or under the standard insurance policy, so that if tornadoes come through, they're covered and we'll be able to get replaced.
I kind of want to go along with that. We've got hail, we've got wind, we've got things happening. Right here on this image, the cows I know go around the thing, or at least can get close to it. what issues have you seen with people running livestock near them? I mean, I know that's fairly common, that a lot of people want to run sheep or something underneath to keep it tidy in a situation like that. Those are small cows, but they're still cows nonetheless.
Mhm. Uh, the sheep are great. They're very friendly. They don't, we haven't seen any damage related to sheep. Cows occasionally will try to like just rub up against it, and that can throw things out of whack. Goats don't they like to jump and they've got hooves. That's bad. That doesn't pair well with panels. So generally in these cases, you're going to want to build a fence around it to keep the livestock out, and then if you want to let the sheep in there to graze, just to keep the grass short, that's cool. The Actually, the most damage we've had from farm related activities have actually been tractor related. So for instance, we had one farm with a cracked panel because they were running a tractor and accidentally threw up some rocks that flew at it. Or in one case, someone, I guess, wasn't paying attention and ran the tractor into the panels and just so yeah, it's actually been we've had more tractor related issues than livestock.
That makes sense. We have another question in the chat. Can you give a very rough estimate for like the upfront cost for a typical grid-tied small farmhouse customer would have to bear before any benefits are realized? I know that's a kind of a lengthy, possibly math question, but off the top of your head, house, small barn, what kind of expense are they looking at?
Yeah, and so this goes back to the financing options. If you're trying to just buy it outright and just want to own the system, our standard for a house is going to be $25,000 to $30,000, and then that's before all the tax credits and other incentives. So assuming you get all those back, then you're done. And we also sell credits to utilities or like carbon credits and things like that. So that $30,000 system becomes a like $12,000 system once you take all that into account.
Okay.
And then from there you are getting your free electricity beyond that. Separately, we have our PPAs and also lease programs for homeowners where we cover all of that cost. So 85% of our customers don't pay up front. 85% of our customers are financing through a loan or a lease or a PPA. And in all those cases, Solar Holler is providing all the capital. And let's say you're leasing the system. Solar Holler owns it. We put it in, and your your lease payments will be at least 15% less than the cost than what you would have paid the utility. So let's say your monthly payment to to the utility was $200. We're going to come in with a lease payment that at its highest would be $170, and then you generate those immediate $30 a month savings. And then those savings go up over time as the utility keeps jacking up rates.
Yeah, very good. Laura Anderson has her hand raised. You want to go ahead, Laura?
Yeah, I am this is more, I'm starting to explore some partnerships with the ag department at our local high school. I work for the city, and we've got some possible like lots that are owned by the city that I would love to be able to hand over to the FFA program at the high school and say, here, make garden, whatever you feel like your group needs. And definitely one of the big concerns was, power, water, those types of things. So I just wanted to kind of go to them with some options when I present, my idea and concept to them. You'd mentioned that you worked with schools before. How did you partner with the Board of Education? How did that work?
Yeah. So we just signed this deal back in November with the Wayne County schools. And actually, our partnership goes even further back. For a couple of years, we had launched an apprenticeship program with their VOTEC school. And so the idea there was we work with seniors at Wayne County High School as well as Spring Valley High School. They go to school 4 days a week, and their classes are focused on carpentry, drafting, electrical theory, all that kind of stuff. And then 1 day a week they're paid members of our crews. And the idea is, okay, you're a senior and you're coming up on this really important fork in your life where you can either take off for Columbus or Richmond or stay home, and we want you to stay home. So actually, it's been really successful so far. Out of the 15 folks, we've had 11 stay on full time post-graduation, which has been incredible. So we had already been working with them on that. And then when it came into the actual solar project, we did some initial mock-ups. It did go to a full-blown request for proposals, as any municipal or public entity needs to. But we put together a proposal for them that covered every single school in the county. So it's 18 schools, and we're using plus the bus garage, plus the Board of Ed office. And we contracted once with the superintendent and the school board to cover all these buildings. It's a $15 million project. Solar Holler is paying for all of that up front. And then the Board of Ed is agreeing to buy the power at a 20% discount to what AP was charging them. So we're cutting the school board's budget by $150,000 a year, what they're paying for electricity, by shifting over to solar. And they don't have to put in a dime up front. They just need to let us use their rooftop.
That's awesome. What were the schools that you work directly with, so I can give that contact information to?
It's the Wayne County School Board. And then so we were working directly with the Board of Ed there and the superintendent.
Okay, thank you.
Great questions. We have another one here in the chat. Is a totally off-grid system more expensive or cheaper than installing a system and hooking into the grid?
They're much more expensive. Battery, if you're trying to go truly off grid, I was mentioning 25 to 30,000 for a typical net metered system. You'd probably add another 40 to 50,000 on top of that for all the batteries, just for an average house. And part of the reason for that is you're trying to provide enough power even on the darkest days in the middle of winter. And so we have to put in enough battery capacity. You basically have to really oversize your battery, and that just adds a lot of expense. Even adding one battery for storage is typically going to be, $13,000-$15,000 to start. So the folks where we're doing where we've been installing batteries for their setups, like the first one we ever did was a farm on a mountain, like top of a mountain in the middle of, what was that, Summers County, I think, down near Hinton. And they're 2 miles from the closest neighbor, and every time the wind blows, their power goes out, and they've got freezers full of beef for sale to market. So for them, it wasn't just the annoyance of not having internet for 10 minutes. It was, they'd lose all their product. So it was a really different financial calculation for them versus like me. My house is in town, in Shepherdstown. Like I barely lose power. There's no reason for me personally to get a battery. So it really just depends on what you're going for.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions that they would like to ask?
I have one.
Okay.
This is Denise. If you were talking about the power going out, and so if you have a system set up that you're not completely off grid, is there a battery with the system, the buyback system? I hope I'm saying that right. So that if the power goes off, you don't lose power even though the grid is off?
Yep. Heather, can you switch back to the little image of the house? Yeah, there you go. These are modeled after we installed Tesla Powerwalls as our main battery. Yes, and all the battery systems we've been installing are really meant for powering kind of essential things. So keeping the lights running. We can size these. You probably need 2 of them to do it, but we can size them to make sure that the well pump keeps going in the event of an outage. So yeah, in those cases, what happens is when the power goes down on the grid, it's the battery kind of kicks into gear and isolates the house, make sure that you'll never push any out, and then the panels recharge the battery while the sun is out, and then you can use it. You can use it to power whatever you need in the house. The size of those systems really depends on how much stuff you're trying to keep going. It's pretty easy to do lights in a fridge and like really the basics. It gets harder if you're adding in HVAC and heat pumps and well pumps and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you're looking for a basic system, you're probably going to be in that like $12,000 to $15,000 range before all the incentives. And then if you're trying to fully keep the house off grid, that's when you start to get up into that 40 to 50.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Does anyone else have any questions? We've had such great conversation here today. I'm just thrilled.
I think there was one question from Sarah in the chat about utilities charging at the premium rate, but credit at the low rate. For now, through the end of this year, they're charging you at retail and crediting you at retail. So that is the best case scenario. And we've got it through the end of this year in First Energy, and then the program starts to change. And we've still got it in AEP. What it will change to next year for First Energy is that they will charge you retail, and then whatever you send back will be not quite wholesale, but this number in the middle. And so in First Energy territory, what the full retail is about 13 cents a kilowatt hour. So you'll buy it from them at 13 cents, but whatever you send back will be 9.3. So you'll have a little bit less. But for any systems we design this year and apply for this year, you'll still get the full 13 cents.
Okay.
Dan, will that continue after next year?
Yep.
Or is that like for
Every
25 years or?
Yeah, it's grandfathered for 25 years. We also got some other really cool protections in there so that if you sell the property or pass it down to the next generation, it gets grandfathered with the property, not the person. So we're really happy about that. And we also got it so that if you add batteries, that doesn't affect it. And you can even can add a little bit, like just for replacement parts without jeopardizing it. So anyway, we're really happy with some of the consumer protections we got in there.
Great, thank you.
And one more question. So hold on, I have to figure out how I want to phrase this. When all this is set up, you come in, you've put the stuff on my roof now. Who sets up with the power company? You help us do that?
Yep, we submit all those applications. We handle the inspections with the utility, as well as, you know, everything gets inspected by electrical inspectors in the county. So we handle all of that. Long term though, like once the system is done, we've got a service department that can help translate bills, but if there's, you know, the utility billing you in 5 years down the line, that's we don't have continued insight into your bill beyond that. So there's only so much we can do there. But yeah, as far as what we do, the 105 employees we've got at Solar Holler, it's running the gamut from the initial design and engineering work, all the finance, all of our crews are in-house, the O&M, the service team is in-house, all the permitting and project management teams and warehouse, that's all. So it's really it's a full package where we're not just plopping panels down on your yard and telling you to go at it. It's not like that at all. We're handling all the details behind the scenes.
Wonderful. Awesome. Okay, I think that answers all my questions. Last call for questions before we let everybody go on to their day. I hope you've enjoyed this today.
Thanks, Sherry.
Yep.
So cool. Well, thank you all so much for joining today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your input and for your questions. We had a very great discussion. Thank you, Dan and Heather, for your time today. It's been a wonderful meeting and we really appreciate it. And we will get this up on YouTube so everyone can have the opportunity to listen to our discussion and learn a little bit more about solar power. And that's all we have today. So thank you guys very much and have a great rest of your day and stay safe with flooding and wind and everything else that seems to be hitting our state right now.
Thank you.